On February 6th, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck southeastern Turkey, the strongest in the country since 1939. Its epicenter was located near the large city of Gaziantep, which has a population of over 1 million people. The tremors were also felt in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and on the border of Armenia and Georgia. According to the latest statement by Erdogan, the death toll from the earthquake could rise to more than 20,000 people. Hundreds of buildings were destroyed, including the Turkish Gaziantep fortress, built during the Roman Empire, and the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization World Heritage Citadels in Syrian Aleppo. In many published videos, multi-story buildings in Turkey collapsed even after the earthquake. In many places, people still refused to go indoors, fearing that the standing buildings could collapse at any moment. Such brutal footage has sparked sharp criticism of the country's construction sector within the country. In Istanbul, houses have already been designed considering modern seismic standards. But in the southeast of the country, there are still many old high-rise buildings. The most striking example here is Japan, where after one of the strongest earthquakes in 2011, high-rise buildings did not collapse, but only swayed. In this country, for obvious reasons, earthquake-resistant construction is the most advanced in the world. Here, for example, is the so-called flying house. In its normal state, the house stands on a regular foundation slab, but without being rigidly attached to it. There is a seismic sensor in the frame, sometimes more than one, and inside the house there is a computer connected to the sensor and an air blower. As soon as the sensor sends an alarm signal to the computer, the blower creates an air cushion under the house. The structure is lifted into the air and remains in that state until the ground returns to a stable condition. Just look at the water in the aquarium and in the wine glass. And in the Tokyo Metropolitan Government skyscraper built on the Lego principle, every 10 floors move independently of each other. However, the latest word in earthquake-resistant construction is considered to be shock-absorbing pedestals, each of which can withstand loads of hundreds of tons. As a result, the building shifts as a whole, and to prevent it from being torn away from the utilities, their connecting parts are made of flexible materials. Japan also has an early warning system for earthquake threats. More than 4,000 seismographs have been installed in the country. If at least 2 of them detect tremors, they immediately determine the approximate area of the earthquake and its epicenter. If an increase in tremors is expected, the Japan Meteorological Agency immediately warns the population about it. The effectiveness of the warning depends on which zone the transmitter is located in. After all, even with such an apparently effective system, in the epicenter zone, underground tremors can occur before the warning arrives. And still, on average, after receiving the warning, there is about a minute to take action. This time is used to find shelter or leave the danger zone. Railway workers slow down trains, and factory workers suspend operations. It turns out that even in the most advanced country in this regard, with the most advanced earthquake-resistant construction and an alert system, you still have, at best, about a minute to prepare for a disaster. That's exactly why this natural phenomenon shocks all of us so emotionally. After all, it can happen completely unexpectedly, at night or early in the morning, like in Turkey, when people simply don't have time to understand anything. You were just sleeping, and the next second you're already under tons of rubble. Turkish seismologists compared what happened to the earthquake of 1999. Back then, near Istanbul in Izmit, on the coast of the Sea of Marmara, one of the most destructive earthquakes in Turkey occurred, with a magnitude of 7.7. Almost 17,500 people died. The destruction zone covered an area of about 30,000 square kilometers in the most densely populated northwestern part of the country, affecting part of Istanbul as well. At that time, the tremor almost completely destroyed Izmit. A fire broke out at the local oil refinery, and Istanbul was left without electricity. What do we know about the most powerful documented earthquakes, faults, and cracks in the Earth's crust? Where do they originate, and what awaits humanity in the future? Let's find out. Thousands of victims, massive destruction, and years spent dealing with the aftermath. No matter how technologically advanced humanity becomes, we still haven't learned how to deal with underground tremors and the accompanying forces of nature. Let's start by looking at the largest earthquake since 1900. Messina, Italy, December 28, 1980. An earthquake with a magnitude of 7.5 occurred on the island of Sicily. It might not have gone down in history as one of the most destructive, but the number of casualties turned out to be unexpectedly huge. Later, the residents and leaders of the region were blamed for the scale of human losses, as they did not pay enough attention to construction recommendations and failed to take into account the experience of previous disasters caused by seismic activity. In a matter of seconds, the underground tremors destroyed Messina and triggered a tsunami with waves up to 12 meters high. More than 100,000 people died as a result of the natural disaster. About 40 villages and small towns were completely destroyed. When dawn came, the scale of the destruction became visible. Russian sailors and doctors provided assistance to the victims and helped to rebuild the city. And even now, a memorial plaque on the building of the Messina City Council reminds us of their involvement in the fate of the Sicilian city. Haiyuan, China, December 16, 1920. Another devastating earthquake with a magnitude of 7.8 occurred in the Chinese province of Gansu in Haiyuan County in 1920. The number of deaths exceeded 200,000 people. The movement of the Earth's crust led to destruction in 7 regions of the country, from the Yellow Sea to the borders with Mongolia. Entire villages were buried under landslides, and the length of the cracks that appeared on the Earth's surface reached 200 kilometers. The natural disaster was not the only cause of death for about 20,000 people affected during the earthquake. They simply couldn't build strong, warm houses, so when the cold came, they died from the cold. Kanto, Japan, September 1st, 1923. The earthquake with a magnitude of 8.3 that occurred in Japan in 1923 is considered the most destructive in the country's history. The epicenter of the disaster, known as the Great Kanto Earthquake, was located 90 kilometers from Tokyo. According to official data, the total number of deaths was 170,000 people. Another 500,000 went missing. Over the course of 2 days, there were more than 350 tremors, as a result of which the major cities of Tokyo and Yokohama were almost completely destroyed. And on the coast in Sagami Bay, fishing villages were washed away by 15-meter waves. The damage was estimated at $4.5 billion, which at that time was twice the country's annual budget. Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, October 5, 1948. The earthquake that occurred in 1948, with a magnitude of 7.3, caused serious damage to the capital and nearby villages, and also affected the village of Diriges in neighboring Iran. The number of casualties reached 110,000 people. According to eyewitnesses, on the night before the disaster, flashes of light of unclear origin appeared in the sky, and dogs behaved strangely. They howled and tried to pull their owners outside by their clothes. The first tremor happened late at night, when people were sleeping. In just 10 seconds, the city was almost wiped off the face of the earth, and Ashgabat was cut off from the outside world. The electricity was out, telephone communication was disrupted, and transportation was not functioning. Under such conditions, it was difficult to inform the population about what was happening. The lack of communication, medications, and the destruction of hospitals led to even greater losses. After regular aid began to arrive from Moscow and cities of other Allied republics, and a military patrol arrived to fight looters, control over the situation was established. The city was cleared, and many of the victims were sent to neighboring Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan. Ashgabat was not prepared for the onset of winter cold, and the remaining residents continued to leave their city. 5 years later, the capital was built up with one-story buildings, and in 2014, a memorial was opened in honor of the victims of the terrible tragedy in Chimbote, Peru. May 31, 1970. The epicenter of the earthquake located in the Pacific Ocean at a depth of more than 60 kilometers, caused powerful tremors with a magnitude of 7.9. The underwater activity triggered landslides in some Peruvian cities and settlements, for example in Yungay. Under the snow avalanche that came down from Mount Huascaran, which is 6,768 meters high, 70% of the city's residents were buried alive. The speed of the descending glacier reached 200 kilometers per hour. Only 300 people survived who hid in the cemetery. The town of Huaraz was also severely affected, where almost all the buildings were destroyed. The disaster wrecked transportation and cut off communication between cities. Cracks appeared in the Pan-American Highway, which made the situation even more difficult for the surviving residents. General Juan Alvarado, who was leading the country at that time, personally participated in delivering food and medicine to the victims in regions cut off from aid. Officially, 70,000 people were recognized as victims, but some sources report that the number of deaths exceeds 100,000. The damage from the disaster exceeded $260 million. Tangshan, China, July 28, 1976. An earthquake with a magnitude of 8.2 resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. According to official statistics, 255,000 residents died, but some estimates put the death toll at over 655,000. Although the earthquake occurred 160 kilometers from Beijing, the destruction also reached the densely populated metropolis. The natural disaster is considered the second largest in all of history, and the deadliest in the last 4 centuries. The first tremor was followed by powerful aftershocks, which buried rescuers and survivors of the initial strike under the rubble. The force of nature practically wiped cities and towns off the face of the earth. The epicenter of the disaster was inhabited not by the wealthiest Chinese, which meant the population density here was high. Moreover, the main impact happened at night when people were sleeping, and it was impossible to act in a coordinated way without panicking. Prior to this event, the city was not deemed a seismically hazardous area. The country's government concealed information about the tragedy, refusing international aid and withholding truthful data about the victims. For this reason, the Red Cross was unable to deliver medicine and food, which increased the number of victims. It took almost 10 years to rebuild Tangshan. An event with such a high death toll can hardly have any positive consequences. Nevertheless, the Tangshan earthquake contributed to increased scientific attention to disaster prediction. Spitak, Armenia, December 7, 1988. A terrible earthquake in Armenia, with a magnitude of 7.2, completely destroyed the Armenian city of Spitak and a number of nearby villages and towns in just half a minute. Almost 40% of the country's territory was affected by the tremors. The number of human casualties reached 25,000. Nearly 150,000 were injured or left disabled, and more than 500,000 residents lost their homes. There are different versions of the cause of the disaster. Some believe that the tremors were triggered by weapons testing, while others believe the disaster was natural. Whatever happened, 30 years ago, experts said that the energy released at the site of the Earth's crust rupture was comparable in scale to the explosion of 10 atomic bombs. Survivors said that during the tremor, buildings literally flew into the air and then came crashing down, turning into deadly rubble under which the residents were buried. The terrible tragedy united the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. People sent clothes, food, and medicine to Armenia and were ready to provide any help needed. A memorial has been erected in Gyumri to the innocent victims and merciful hearts in memory of the Sumatra, Indonesia tragedy. December 26, 2004. A 9.1 magnitude earthquake caused by a sudden rupture of the sea floor resulted in more than 220,000 deaths. More than 1.8 million people lost their homes as a result of the disaster and the subsequent tsunami in 14 countries of Asia and East Africa. The tsunami was inescapable. The giant wave, moving at a speed of 720 kilometers per hour, was rapidly approaching the coastal zone, where its height reached 30 meters at the point of impact, and its speed was 36 kilometers per hour. An hour and a half later, the wave reached the coast of Thailand, where, in addition to local residents, about 2,500 tourists died. Then it passed over the Maldives, leaving another 100 people dead, and struck Sri Lanka and India, where about 50,000 people died. 7 hours later, the tsunami reached the coast of East Africa, where, due to the lack of information about the terrible threat, people also died. This case clearly showed the urgent need to inform the population about disasters in the seismically active Indian Ocean. After all, in theory, almost 60,000 people had several hours to leave the coastline, but they didn't know about the impending disaster. The damage to the economies of the countries affected by the disaster exceeded $10 billion. Sichuan, China, May 12, 2008. The devastating earthquake, with a magnitude of 7.9 in the Sichuan region, affected not only the major Chinese cities of Beijing and Shanghai, located 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers from the epicenter, but also India, Thailand, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Mongolia, and even Russia. More than 350,000 people were injured, 15 million were evacuated, and the number of victims reached 90,000. On the same day, a second tremor with a magnitude of 6 occurred, increasing the number of victims. The damage caused by the disaster was estimated at $86 billion. The earthquake happened during the day, when people were at work and children were at school. In just one of the region's schools, 1,000 students and teachers were declared dead or missing. Although the disaster occurred in an area with high seismic activity, experts say that the nature of the catastrophe is man-made. The tremors may have been caused by water pressure at the hydroelectric power station located 6 kilometers from the epicenter in Haiti on January 12, 2010. The catastrophic earthquake in Haiti, with a magnitude of 7, claimed the lives of more than 220,000 people and caused devastating destruction to the nation's capital, Port-au-Prince, where a third of the country's population lives, and nearly 100,000 buildings were wiped off the face of the earth. In the past 250 years, no disasters of such magnitude have occurred in the region. Therefore, special standards relevant for areas of high seismic activity were not applied in building construction. The earthquake's epicenter was at a depth of 10 kilometers, and after the main shock, there were 2 weaker aftershocks with magnitudes of 5.9 and 5.5. Haiti is a country where most of the population lives in poverty, in slums and shacks, and as a result, the republic has a very high population density. Almost 2 million residents lost their homes as a result of the earthquake, and the material damage amounted to nearly $8 billion. Unfortunately, the country's misfortunes were not limited to the natural disaster. The widespread destruction led to anarchy, looting, increased violence, and the formation of criminal gangs in the refugee camps. Moreover, while other countries helped fight hunger, the local authorities were unable to solve the sanitary and epidemiological problems, and the country was swept by a cholera epidemic. Many questions also remain about how the international funds allocated for disaster relief were spent. For example, millions were spent on social advertising urging Haitians to wash their hands. At the same time, its relevance was considered questionable given the lack of soap and clean water. Not only earthquakes and tsunamis are caused by seismic activity. According to modern scientific understanding of the structure and movement of our planet's solid shell, the lithospheric plates that make up the upper layer of this shell are in constant motion relative to each other. In some places, the plates move toward each other, in others they move apart, and at the boundaries of these movements, seismic, volcanic, and tectonically active zones are formed. And although the plates move incredibly slowly, from 1 to 10 centimeters per year, depending on the direction of movement, their restlessness causes a lot of trouble and concern for people who have chosen such places as their permanent residence. However, some of these formations in the Earth can amaze even the biggest skeptics. The Pacific Ring of Fire. Not so long ago, researchers managed to establish that the Pacific Ring of Fire is nothing more than a huge tectonic fault. This unique area, located along the perimeter of the Pacific Ocean, is home to 328 active volcanoes out of the 540 known on Earth. The volcanic chain covers the territory of many countries. One of the most seismically dangerous regions is considered to be Indonesia. It is here that the plate forming the floor of the Indian Ocean is located, gradually moving under the Pacific Plate. The result of such proximity is regular destructive eruptions, earthquakes, and the tsunamis they trigger, which turn life on these paradise islands into hell on Earth. The Pacific Ring of Fire threatens the existence of several major archipelagos, which could be completely submerged in the event of another earthquake. The Solomon Islands, the Philippines with their world-famous resort areas, the Kuril Islands, and the Aleutian Archipelago, all these territories could cease to exist at any moment. For now, many volcanoes formed along the fault line remain popular tourist attractions. For example, on the island of Sumatra, tours to Mount Kerinci, which is an active volcano, are popular among tourists. Giant rifts. In recent years, researchers have been paying attention to giant rifts, whose power and danger had long been underestimated. These are huge fractures in the Earth's crust, formed by the movement of the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates. They move apart by about 7 millimeters each year. At first, this figure may seem insignificant, but at this rate, over the past 10,000 years, the rift has widened by 70 meters. If you compare these figures to the age of our planet, tectonic changes seem more than impressive. San Andreas Fault. The largest and most famous fault in the world is the San Andreas Fault. A significant part of it runs on land in California. The fault is about 1,300 kilometers long, and it was formed as a result of the destruction of the Farallon lithospheric plate. The giant rift is the cause of serious earthquakes, with magnitudes reaching 8.1. Because of the San Andreas Fault, several serious earthquakes have occurred in California, resulting in the deaths of dozens of people. The maximum ground displacement recorded in the fault area was 7 meters. Over the past 100 years, the town of Santa Cruz, located in the vicinity of San Francisco, has suffered greatly from numerous earthquakes. In 1989 alone, more than 18,000 houses were destroyed there, and 62 people died as a result of the disaster. A crack in Kenya. In April 2018, a huge crack appeared near the capital of Kenya, Nairobi. It was several kilometers long, 15 meters deep, and 20 meters wide. Scientists from the Smithsonian Institution in the United States suggested that in 50 million years, this crack will be the reason Africa splits into two parts. The cause of its appearance was said to be the movement of tectonic plates, which move away from each other by about 3 centimeters every year. However, other experts claim that no underground tremors have been recorded in this area, and the crack appeared because of frequent heavy rains. If the crack continues to grow, then according to some geologists' forecasts, it will split Africa in just 50 million years. According to supporters of this hypothesis, a similar crack separated Africa from South America more than 135 million years ago. At the same time, trouble for people could start earlier. A highway runs through the fault, and by local standards, it's quite busy. For now, they've just filled in the hole. But if the spreading continues, a significant part of the road will simply sink underground. Lake Kivu is one of the great African lakes. The freshwater Kivu is located in the East African Rift Valley, a landform at the boundary of the African and Arabian tectonic plates. Kivu separates Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and on the territory of the latter is one of the world's largest freshwater islands, Ijwi. The lake basin is gradually expanding, which not only causes the reservoir to deepen, but also leads to volcanic activity in the region. For example, in 1948, there was an eruption of the nearby Kituro volcano. They say that the water in Lake Kivu boiled at that time, and all the fish swimming in the lake were cooked. The locals only had to scoop their ready-made dinner out of the water. And yet, The most serious danger is hidden not on the surface, and not even in the surroundings of the lake, but beneath its waters. The fact is that deposits of natural methane and carbon dioxide are hidden at the bottom of Kivu, and an explosion or release of these gases could cause the death of all Rwandans and Congolese living near Kivu. And that's about 2 million people. The trigger for the disaster could be, for example, the eruption of one of the volcanoes located in the region. In 2017, Nyiragongo erupted here once again. At that time, the Baikal Rift was spared. But are there any dangerous faults in Russia, you might ask? Yes, there are, and one of them is known to every compatriot since childhood. And this is one of the main natural treasures of our country, a United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization World Heritage Site, Lake Baikal. More precisely, the Baikal Rift Zone, or the Baikal Rift, is a deep crustal fault stretching for 1,500 kilometers, the central part of which is flooded with water. That is Baikal. According to geologists, the rift is the result of the divergence of the Eurasian and Amur plates. By the way, the latter is creeping toward Japan at a speed of 4 millimeters per year and collides there with the North American and Philippine plates, which is one of the reasons for the constant seismic activity on the Japanese islands. The main danger, as in the case of Kiev, lies at the bottom of the lake. The bottom of Baikal is a tectonic fault, with the lake's shores constantly moving apart. According to scientists' predictions, in just a few 100 million years, a mere moment on the scale of the universe, Baikal will turn into a real ocean. However, for now, the biggest headache for the people living here is not strong, but regular earthquakes, when parts of the land sink underground, sometimes taking residential houses with them, and the more rare, but no less dangerous, volcanic eruptions. Could it be that our planet is splitting apart? While this scenario seems far-fetched, nature's unpredictability makes anything possible. Write in the comments what you think about this. Don't forget to rate this episode and subscribe to the channel. And check out this video of ours about 10 craters on our planet, the origin of which no one knows. See you in the next episodes.